welcome back to the 5th video in our series. So in the last video we covered the workspace layout, and in particular the importer workspace. But now we're actually going to cover the reports themselves, and to do that we're going to use the training workspace as our launchpad. So I'm going to go in here and select the training workspace. And again, like in the last video, under the navigation list on the left side I have some canned reports to choose from. I'm going to go ahead and select the first one, and that's Train 001, Entries by Port. And when I do that, you're going to see that the report loads along with the prompt dialog box. Now the prompt dialog box is going to be where I put in filters to constrain the data that I return. And so filters serve two primary purposes. The first of which is to limit the data to specifically what it is that I'm targeting, and the second is to improve the speed or performance of a query. Now I should note there are some minor technical differences between a prompt and a filter, but for the purposes of this video we're going to just go ahead and assume that they're one and the same thing, which actually works because in this case these prompts are acting as filters. So starting with the first prompt, which is entry date begin, you'll see here there's a little calendar icon on the right side. If I click that, then it's going to bring up the calendar menu for me. So looking at the top right hand corner of the calendar, you'll see there's going to be arrows going down and up. And if I click to scroll through those, that actually changes the year of the calendar. The arrows in the top left allow me to scroll through the months of the calendar. And once I've chosen a specific month and year, if I go inside the calendar and select one of the dates within it, then it's going to automatically populate the filter for me. Now you'll know this is complete once the bold text enters the prompt summary screen here in the top left-hand corner. Now a lot of users assume that after they select their date, the next step is to hit OK. This will actually send a command to the system to run the query, and we don't want to do that just yet. So once the bold text in the top left-hand corner over there enters the prompt summary screen, that's the indication that a prompt has been set. So moving on to the next filter, which is end date, here I'm going to show you another option that you can use when using the calendar menu. If you look at the bottom portion of the calendar, you'll see there's a shortcut for today. And selecting this gives you the current date and time, which is great to use for an end date filter. Now a quick note in terms of setting a date range. The most reliable method of fixing the issue of queries timing out is to set a date range of around 1 to 2 months. Okay, moving on to the third filter, the port of entry code. So if I click that, you're going to see that I have a different options menu for entering the filter. Now there's a few methods for actually entering filters here, and the first one of those is in the top bar. If you know the value that you want to enter without having to look it up, then you can type it in and then click the arrow to the right to add it to the filter list. Now the second option, you'll see here there's this little bar that says refresh values. If I click that, it'll give me a list of potential values that I'm able to add to the filters. And from there I can click the value and select the right arrow again, or I can just simply double click the value and it'll add it to the filter list for me. Now say that I wanted to search within the list of values for a value that I partially know. You can also use this bottom bar here that has the binoculars next to it to search the full list of values. Now this search accepts wildcard values, so I'll show you a few examples of that. So I'll start by placing the number 1 first without any wildcard symbols. And once I've typed 1 in the box, I click the binoculars to search, and you'll see that all the results contain the number 1. Now the syntax for a wildcard is an asterisk, so if I were to say add an asterisk to the end of the number 1, well then I'm only going to get the values that begin with 1. Similarly, if I add an asterisk before the 1, it's only going to give me the values that end in 1. The asterisk wildcard essentially means that anything can come before or after, depending on where it's placed in the search syntax. And so that being the case, if I were to put an asterisk both before and after the 1, it would operate the same as the first search in which I had no wildcards whatsoever. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and add one more port code here for good measure, and then we'll go to the last filter, country of origin code. Now quick note, as you'll see when I click refresh values, it's difficult to see all the values in that box. In the top bar, if I click that and drag it, I'm able to actually move the panel itself. Now if you'll notice, the prompt dialog box has two different sections. The first one on the left side is the prompt summary section, and the second on the right side is the enter values for section. And this changes based on the prompt that's currently selected. If you look in the middle between those two sections, there's going to be 4 little gray dots. And you're able to click that section if you hover over it, and then you can drag and expand the section that you want to see more of. Now another way of dynamically changing the size of the prompt dialog box, if you look in the bottom right hand corner, you should see a little gray arrow here. If you hover over that gray arrow and then you click and drag, you should be able to expand the box to the size that you want. Alright, the last thing we're going to modify, in between the two different columns here, in the enter values for country of origin code section, you can actually click in between the two column headers and adjust the width of each column respectively. Alright, so now I'm going to scroll down the page and select my last filter for all of these prompts. And once I finish that, you'll see that all of my prompts are now in bold in the prompt summary section. I'm then going to click OK in the bottom right hand corner to run the query. And depending on the size of your query, it's going to take a little bit of time for it to process. But if your query was successful, you should see that rows of data populate into the report. Now let's assume that we forgot something in the first query. Let's say we wanted to go back in and add an additional port code to capture 4 ports instead of 3. If you go to the top of the page, you should see a refresh symbol icon. And if I click that, it's going to bring up that prompt dialog box back up for me. And here I can modify the filters that I just set. So I'm going to go back in and add just one more port code to my list so that I can expand my previous results. And once I do that, I'll click OK again to rerun the query. And as you can see, the results of my query now have one additional row of data for the port code that I added to my filters. And that's going to be it for the 5th video in our series. I know there was a lot of content in this video, so I appreciate everyone's patience and perseverance. In the next video, we're going to go ahead and cover how to save a report and how to export it in different formats such as PDF and Excel spreadsheets.